Okay, thank you for being here. I would like to provide an update on two cases. The first case that I want to provide an update on is a case that occurred on Saturday evening, early morning hours of Sunday morning at the Cabana Live, Sanford. It was a shooting where 10 people were injured. Again, that was the Cabana Live location at 4380 Caraway Place in Sanford. It's a location, the property of the location is actually owned by Seminole County proper. It is then leased out to the Seminole County Port Authority there in Sanford, who leases it out to Boat Tree Marina, and ultimately Cabana Live is a restaurant bar at that location. Cabana Live opens up to the general public on most days, but they also allow the venue to be leased out for private events and private parties. And over the past week, they've done that on a number of occasions. Normally, the procedure when you do that is to receive a permitting process from the county. We know that the promoters did not receive a permit prior to hosting this event on Saturday. The event was an event that was targeting, it was labeled officially and non-official word of the mouth is Nobody Leaves Sober Pool Party. It was a party that was set to start at 8 p.m. and end at 2 a.m. Sunday morning. There was a $10 cover charge, and the promoters of the event brought 10 armed security members to ensure that security at the event was being provided. On Saturday night, around 200 people showed up at the event, and the security was at the door checking IDs and then patting people down for weapons. Again, in Florida law, if you are 21 years of age, have not been convicted of a felony, you are now legally able to carry a concealed firearm. You can carry a concealed firearm into establishment that does the majority of their business in food, and that is the case at Cabana Live. Mostly deals with food. So legally, if somebody was walking in, they could carry a concealed weapon, whether they had a concealed weapon license or now with the new law that has been put into effect, permitless carry in Florida. But the promoters and the vendors did not allow firearms at the event. And the security officers on scene had reported multiple times that they had turned people away who they found to be in the possession of a firearm. They would escort them back to the car, and they would secure their weapon and ultimately come in. Again, 10 security officers, 200 people there, $10 cover charge, and a private event being conducted on Saturday, April 27th into the early morning hours of the 28th. At around midnight, a sergeant that was on routine patrol at the sheriff's office drove through the parking lot and saw a couple of hundred vehicles that were in the location, and then said, you know what, anytime so many people are gathering, alcohol is involved, it lends the potential for problems. So the sergeant initiated what's called an area patrol on behalf of the sheriff's office. This lets everyone know that they're in the area, they're checking out, and the sergeant asked for one additional unit, one deputy sheriff assigned to the north region of Seminole County in the Sanford area to join him at that location. That was about midnight. So large venue, party going on, no disturbance, deputy and a sergeant at the location in the parking lot, staying close by should anything go wrong. At around 30 minutes later, 12:30 in the morning, I think it's 12:27 in the morning exactly, the deputies are in the parking lot where they hear shots fired from the inside of the establishment. They immediately leave their vehicles, they run towards the entry level of the entry door, and they can't get in through the front door because obviously people are flooding out of the business. They work with the owner and operator of the property, and they find another way in through a back door. And as soon as they arrived on the scene, there are people still coming out. They're giving orders to get down on the ground. And one security guard at the location presents somebody, one of the shooters, that is already in handcuffs and presents them to the deputies that arrive on scene. And you'll see a little bit of video, and we can say that this particular security officer acted heroically on tackling a shooter who is actively in the process of firing weapons. So the first person we want to talk about is a 16-year-old that reports have already talked about, Christopher Eugene Bowie. And he is from Volusia County. I've had conversations with the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice Secretary Eric Hall and authorities in Volusia County, and there's no prior history on Christopher Eugene Bowie, meaning no arrest, he wasn't involved in the system. This is not a case where he was on anybody's radar of somebody to watch or areas of concern. One of the obvious questions is, how did he get into a venue that was largely geared towards people 21 and over and labeled Nobody Leaves Sober pool party? And that's something that we will continue to work with. In addition to that, the state of Florida has sent their state agents that work with beverages and regulations under business regulations to actually come and provide an audit and a survey of this particular establishment. We know that Christopher Eugene Bowie was armed with a 9mm handgun. I'll show you some still photos and then a video of him producing that firearm. The firearm that he had was a Smith & Wesson 9mm that was legally purchased in Miami in 2018. Where the gun's been at for the past 6 years, we don't know, but we do know that the gun is not registered as stolen. And of course, the backstory on how Christopher Bowie got in possession of that firearm is something that we're going to look at as this investigation continues. There's another person who's identified at this particular location. So this isn't a case where Christopher Bowie is the only person firing rounds, likely resulting in 10 people being injured. You can see from the video, I can't see it from my angle. Okay, that's why. You can see a video of the inside of the vent. You can see a fight that is breaking out, a physical altercation there. And to the right and the left of the screen is going to be Bowie pulling out a gun, firing shots. You can see that to the right of the screen, and then ultimately being tackled by that brave security officer, very likely preventing other people from being killed or seriously injured. And then if we can play that back again, I want to draw your attention to the left side of the pool, the other side of the screen, and there's muzzle flash on that area as well. So what we have is two people engaged in gunfire on the left and right side of the physical altercation that's going on. And then I'll show you a couple of still photographs here in a moment that indicate exactly where they're at and what they were doing. But I think you can see clearly the heroic actions of the security guard and what is likely another security guard picking the firearm off the ground and ejecting one live round of a 9mm round. And that will come into play when I talk about shell casings that are on the ground and different things that are going on there. Can we go to the still photo right here? So the first still photo on the right side of the screen is going to be 16-year-old Bowie. He is the first person that presents a firearm during this altercation. Again, physical altercation occurring inside the club, the venue. Bowie is the first to pull out the firearm. He's wearing a hooded jacket that's zipped up, and he fires 2 rounds right there. The second person is the person that's standing on the other side of the pool, and you can see where that red circle is around that person, and you can see muzzle flash what is likely a .45 caliber handgun returning fire, which could absolutely be a self-defense situation from somebody who had a legal right to possess a firearm and finds themselves in harm's way. We just don't know who that person is yet. We're conducting further evaluation of the video surveillance system at Cabana Live, as well as other people who are working with us. But clearly, we want to know who the person is on that side, likely firing a .45 handgun, returning fire to Bowie's fire that's there. Again, you can see those two people, the unidentified black male on the left side of the pool, returning fire, is somebody who we want to learn more about. And we will have those videos enhanced, and we will continue to talk with people. So if somebody was there or he wants to step forward, be happy to talk to him. The shell casings and the reports, before we get into Tank Dell, who's also at this event. In total, again, there was 10 people who were injured. 10 people were hospitalized. None suffered life-threatening injuries. 9 have been released from the hospital. 1 is still in the hospital and is likely to be released soon. Shell casings. So the report of Bowie, Bowie has a 9mm. There are 4 muzzle flashes during this firearm encounter back and forth. There are 3 expelled casings of a 9mm that are found on the ground. 1 live round, which is likely when the security officer ejects the live round. But again, 4 muzzle flashes, 3 casings, 1 live round, and with scenarios like this, sometimes you just don't initially find the extra casing. Now, there's a pool there, it's easily could have dropped and somebody could have been kicked with people fleeing out of the area. On the other side of the room, and the person who has yet to be identified, there are 5 muzzle flashes on that side, and there are 5 .45 caliber shell casings that were located on the scene. And I think that this is a little bit of a different narrative than what we initially thought, that one person presented a firearm, fired multiple times, injuring 10 people. This is a shootout that's going back and forth. Let me show where Tank Dell. Nathaniel Dell is obviously a 3rd round 2023 draft pick, 69th overall from the Houston Texans. Somebody who was a star athlete in the Daytona Beach area, known to a lot of people there. He is standing literally between the firearm altercation. The video shows that he's walking. His report, because he is a victim in this case, he has been injured as a result of this. His report was that he saw this, or actually he saw what was going on. He took his cell phone out, had his cell phone in his hand, but you can see the position that he's in. He's right in the middle of this firearm altercation. And again, we will continue to work with him as a victim in this particular case. So where we're at with this, as investigations like this continue to evolve, the county will meet later today. I've had several conversations with our county team, particularly the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, Jay Zimbauer. They are incredibly concerned about this business operating without the official permitting process, and they will have a conversation as a board, and then ultimately the Seminole County authorities responsible for this location will make a determination whether that moves forward or not. Department of Business and Professional Regulations in the state of Florida, again, is also sending some folks from the Division of Alcohol and Tobacco to conduct an assessment and a summary of the location. And the investigation will follow up with enhancing the videos and then hopefully evaluating public testimony, because you can see in this nightclub, there's a lot of people who have their cell phones out. There's actually one professional photographer you can see right next to the area that's indicating Bowie, who has what appears to be a very sophisticated recording system that probably has great video of the entire incident. So that's where we're at with this investigation. The charging of Bowie, that's something that is in the hands of the 18th Judicial Circuit. We have our team there, and what they do is they independently evaluate what the most appropriate charges are based on the circumstances of this case, and they will do that independently of this by looking at all of the factors in this particular case. At least one count of attempted murder has been charged, and other felony charges centered around possessing and firing a gun at an event like this, totaling 4 different charges. Again, possession of a firearm, firing a firearm in public, but the most significant charge there is the 1 count of attempted murder in this particular case. So with that, I will pause, entertain questions on this case before we move to the next.
To clarify, before my question, Sheriff, in the blue circle, is that Dell on the left or on the right facing us?
So Dell is circled in blue with the white shirt on.
Okay, I see another person there. Okay, with the back to the camera.
Right here.
Okay, got it.
So his position here, he looks to be holding something like this. His hands seem to be elevated.
Okay.
His report is that he's holding his cell phone. When shots are fired and you can see muzzle flash, he gets out of the way pretty quickly.
And then, so my question is, was this event for him?
This event, to our knowledge, was not for him. He says that he's friends with a promoter that invited him to this event. Not this promoter necessarily, but he was friends with a promoter. I'm sure he knows a lot of people, but had received an invitation to attend this event. This does not appear like it was an event for him. We know that on Thursday night they had an NFL watch party event, but this particular event was marketed and branded on social media differently, and it had no reference or mention to him even being there. So we think it's likely that he just showed up, but this wasn't set for him.
What is the connection between the alleged shooter and Dell at this point?
We don't know any connection at this point in the investigation. Dell seems to be attending this party, just like anyone else here, and happens to be standing between 2 people who are in a gun battle. Obviously, this is initiated by a physical altercation. I think that once we saw Bowie present his firearm, it was right after the people started to roll on the ground and physically fight. The person on the left probably sees the gun. We think Bowie fired at least twice, and the first shot of the unknown third party looks like he was actually pulling his firearm out of his pocket, and there's an unintentional discharge when he's pulling his gun out. And anybody who's ever been in a gunfight, when you hear gunshots being fired, usually it results in more gunshots being fired. So what it looks like, again, we don't know, we haven't spoken to him, we're just analyzing the video, is that he's pulling what's likely a .45 caliber handgun out of his pocket that does not appear to be in a holster, and it looks like his first shot goes into the ground right in front of him, which in our experience probably indicates an unintentional discharge for the first round. But then we have 4 additional rounds as the gunfight's going back and forth.
Sheriff,
We'll go here and then we'll go right over.
what is your message to the community, particularly the 10 victims? You said 9 of them are already out of the hospital, but obviously the community is shaken up.
Well, the community is shaken up, and anytime there is a gun battle, gun fight, any person injured like that, it is incredibly alarming. I think that if there is a message is, I think that we have to be incredibly mindful of where we go and who we're associating with. Again, we did not know that this event was being held. There is a permitting process that normally has to go through that we know that this establishment did not do. And I think that the clear indicator is when a sergeant and a deputy on routine patrol stops at a location and says, let me hang out here because I anticipate there may be some problems at this event later on, right? That is a clue when 2 people on routine patrol says, let me stay close by to this event and in case something goes wrong. And clearly, it did. Not 30 minutes later, the deputies hear shots fired and are able to get on the inside. I can't emphasize this enough. The heroic actions of this security officer took a very dangerous situation and made it less significant than what the potential could have been. And eventually I will talk to him and I will congratulate him and I'll thank him for his courage and to be able to do that. But you remember from the video here, I mean, he literally tackled this guy from behind, brought him to the ground, and delivered him to us in handcuffs. So we have his gun, we have him in custody,
last question, is the sheriff's office pushing the 8th Circuit or having those conversations to see if he will eventually be charged as an adult?
So that is something that our 18th Judicial Circuit will make a determination in. We find it incredibly important to stay in our lane, charge what we feel is appropriate, and let the state attorneys that are charged with this case make that determination. I suspect, because this just happened over the weekend, I suspect that they have not yet made that determination, but I think that it is in the interest of fairness, their role and their responsibility to make that determination and move forward with that.
Sheriff, had the business gone through the proper permitting process, do you feel like that would have changed the outcome of what happened there that evening?
Yeah, you know, I don't want to sensationalize this thing. I don't know if they would have went through the official permitting process, if it would have changed anything. I think that having a permitting process is there for a reason. It gives an independent eye. But with these types of things, I mean, we know that somebody carrying a firearm could introduce that firearm in any area, whether it's a bar, whether it's other public space. So I don't know that we can say if it were not for the permitting process, this would have never happened. But I know that there's rules established for a reason. And I think that rules need to be followed. So I think that the county will be following up and kind of looking at that as well.
And you say this stemmed from that physical altercation. Do we know why those two people were fighting, and if Bowie knew either one of those two people?
Don't know why they were fighting, and don't know yet if there's a connection between Bowie. We're assuming that a physical altercation is what sparked Bowie pulling out that firearm and firing shots in the very beginning. He has exercised his constitutional right to remain silent. He has an attorney representing him in that process. And what we'll do is we'll find more information from witnesses, other video evidence at the scene. We'll put those pieces together. We're just not there yet. Clearly, any person who looks at this looks like the physical altercation and the shooting are probably connected, but we'll work to put those dots together. But we know of no relationship right now between Bowie, the people who are wrestling around, physically fighting on the ground, or the other person, what appears to be returning fire on the other side of the room. Now, let me emphasize the unknown person. That unknown person could absolutely be justified under Florida's self-defense laws to pull out a gun and return fire if somebody is firing at them. We just don't know the circumstances until we can find that person, talk to them.
Sheriff, you said in the beginning they were checking IDs at the door, and they were checking to see who had weapons. So we know at least the 16-year-old couldn't have had an ID to get in to drink, and he couldn't have legally possessed a handgun. Where did that get missed?
So the handgun would probably be tied into the checking of ID. I mean, we know from this security group, and it seems like if you have 10 armed security officers for an event that's going to attract 200 people, it appears that you're doing your due diligence to have enough security on hand. And clearly, with the actions of the security officer tackling the gunman, I mean, if it were not for those heroic actions of that security guard, I think that we would have a worse scenario here. But I don't know that that kid came through those front doors. I don't know if he snuck through the back. I don't know if he was in the venue before the venue ever opened. I don't know if he's connected or related to somebody who's involved in the setup of this thing. We just simply don't know that now. What we will do is we will analyze camera video at the very front of this establishment, which likely is going to record every person that's coming through the door. That will help us determine who our unknown person is here, and likely determine whether or not Bowie came through those legitimate means. But at this time, we just don't know if he was in there, if he snuck in, if he came through a back door, if he used a fake ID. There's too many unknowns at this point in time.
You said that the companies are going to be investigated, right? What are those companies that you're talking about? Talking about specifically about Cabana Live plus the promoter, or we'll just clarify that.
Well, I think what's going on is Cabana Live did not fulfill compliance regulations for a permitting process through the county. Again, that's the county side to speak about. I have had some conversations with County Chairman Jay Zimbauer. They will be looking at that. That's out of our lane of our criminal justice investigation. In addition to that, state has a beverage department that regulates businesses that are dealing, serving alcohol. They have a license to serve alcohol. They are sending representatives down because they obviously have questions as how does a 16-year-old get into a venue like this, let alone carrying a gun, but there's alcohol that's going on. So the state may be able to sanction and leverage against somebody's liquor license and the opportunity to do business. That, again, is a state function, and other just kind of explaining that out, that's under somebody else's umbrella, not being initiated and followed up by this office.
Sheriff, do you have the other videographer's footage? And if you don't, how important is it to get it?
So we don't have other video footage, that particularly the one with the advanced camera. I don't know that we have that yet. So we want to encourage him to provide the information, the video. We do have people that are at the scene working with us, people who are releasing their video. I think that an overwhelming majority of the people here are law-abiding people that were running for their lives, and they want to help this investigation out in any way that they possibly can. So I hope that when they watch this story, when they listen to this back, hey, I was at the location, it was frightening, I do have some video, I did have some conversations that I think may be helpful in this case. This is what happens. This will get media attention, it will be shared on social media platforms, and we want to encourage people to come forward and share with us what they know. Obviously, we have a lot of evidence here with technology and videos and all of that, and I'm confident that we'll put all the pieces together, but it seems like getting out front, talking about this, and you can see I had to circle these things because it's kind of hard to see in this video, but this likely will be enhanced. Yes? in the
Were
back.
all the 10 people shot, or are there additional injuries overall?
So 10 people were shot. None of the people who suffered injuries, none of them were life-threatening. I mean, I guess we're hopeful that these bad guys, or one bad guy was not a good shot, and the other person with the gun maybe acting in self-defense. But what happens in situations like this, you have legitimate, pure shots that hit, and then you have some that maybe hit two people. One round may go through one person, they call it through and through. The bullet may go through, travel through, and maybe hit somebody else. I told you that the first shot from the unknown person that may have been acting in self-defense looked like there was an unintentional discharge because that first round looked like it hit the ground just feet in front of his body. That's likely to ricochet. So we will conduct full analysis of the rounds, the bullets, and all of that. But I think that we can be incredibly fortunate for so many people to be gathered together for a total of, I think 10 rounds being fired. We've got 5 45mm shell casings. We've got 3 shell casings of 9mm and 1 ejected 9mm round. We're incredibly lucky that nobody's dead and there's not more injuries. And again, I can't emphasize enough, that security officer doing the bear hug and getting the shooter to the ground was probably incredibly important in that process.
Do you know how many people were there in total, including employees?
It looks like about 200 people were there at the event in total. We don't know now the exact number, but as we go back and look at it, we will know exactly how many people were there. It looks like the majority of the people that were gathered at this event actually lived in Volusia County. So these are mostly people from the Daytona Beach area. We have a couple people from other areas of Volusia County, but an overwhelming majority of our victims, our shooter in this case, Bowie, they're all from Volusia County.
Do you know if the venue has any more events coming up? It is about to start in summer.
Well, I suspect that any events that they have coming up that have not been properly permitted are going to be discontinued. And I think that later today, the authority, the Seminole County authority that governs this, will make a determination on whether or not they have the ability to hold functions like this. Again, that's something that will come later today. I don't know if they have anything else planned. I believe that they had something planned for Sunday, which may have been canceled as a result of this, but I'm not 100% sure.
Where should we be looking for that information later? The Seminole County Authority coming out and saying whether or not they can have events like this?
So again, it's I'm trying to remain in our lane. I think that the authority would be the county, our Seminole County Board of County Commissioners, the county manager. I mean, we've got a fabulous working relationship and partnership about that. They had no idea that these events were going on. There had been no prior reports, prior indicators. So I think that they are working to ensure that something like this never happens again. It will be their authority and voice that probably provides follow-up on that.
Do we know, is this club, restaurant, all ages during the day, and then it turns to 21 and up after a certain time? What's the age limit?
Yeah, so during the daytime, it's just like a regular restaurant. You know, I think we've all seen or heard of these restaurants. They have a great menu, a pool. People can bring their family in there. They can market to anyone else. And I don't know that we've had really any problems. We did a 1.5-year analysis of all of the calls for service at that location. There were 91 calls, which are not that significant considering that 70% of those calls were just calls self-initiated by deputies. We're following up, we're checking out, we're making sure that nobody's burglarized the business. There was 27 or so calls for service that were like police or law enforcement related, and there were only 3 urgent calls. So at a restaurant bar, to have only 3 priority calls in 1.5 years is nothing real significant. So it's not like, you know, we've seen this place every Friday or Saturday night is causing problems. That is not the narrative here. Now, their permitting is something completely different, but there's been no reputation of them holding events at that particular venue that raise questions and concerns. They do say, however, that in the evening hours, it's 21 and over. That this particular private event was, I believe, a 21 and over event, $10 cover charge going in. So I think it's at 8 p.m. or so, they shift from their primary business of serving food and a family type of environment to more of a nightlife type of venue. Any more questions before we move to the next case on this? And we'll give a media packet and we'll do all that we can.
I just want to understand, you say that you don't know about the 16 years old, how he get in, right? But you also say that they wasn't allowed guns into this event. So they know how the other person got their gun into the event?
Yeah, I don't know. So they were relying on pat-down inspections. Security was relying on pat-down inspections. They weren't sending people through what we call metal detector or magnetometer. So they were patting people down. And look, you know, a pat-down search is only as good as your ability to do it. So it does not surprise me that someone was able to get in. Now, I think an important clarification here is, in the eyes of Florida law, it was not prohibited to carry a gun in an establishment that does the majority of their business with serving food. So carrying a gun in that location could have been absolutely legal. But their preference as a private event says no guns are allowed, and they were trying to monitor and regulate that to the best of their ability. How they got in is something that we'll know more about later, but at this point in the briefing, we just don't know. What is helpful in this case, though, is this is not a case where we feel like there's a dangerous person that is out there in the community, that there's a part of this investigation that needs to be wrapped up because the general public is in harm's way. We have Bowie, who's the instigator, the shooter, and the likely person facing criminal charges. The other person that we're looking for could have absolutely been acting in self-defense in that particular scenario. Okay, so let's shift, if we can, back to the kidnapping and murder case of Catherine Aguas Vivas. And I think that what has been incredibly important for us throughout this investigation is to be open and transparent and share as much information as we possibly can because of the frightening circumstances of this particular case and being captured on video by this Seminole County citizen who we're incredibly grateful for. As a recap, in the early stages of this investigation, I think that I had made a nexus potentially between an Orange County murder investigation. I think that we talked about the kidnapping which clearly occurred here in Seminole County. We knew that the perpetrators and suspects of this crime traveled through Orange County, that the murder of Catherine largely and likely occurred in Osceola County. And just in that scenario alone, we're talking about 2 different jurisdictions, 3 different jurisdictions in 2 different circuits. You have the 9th Circuit that covers the state for Orange and Osceola counties. You have the 18th Judicial Circuit, our great partners with our state attorney that covers Brevard in Seminole County. And then throughout this investigation, the collaboration and partnership with our federal partners has been crucial to our timely delivery of results and making sure that these dangerous people are apprehended. That's the DEA, the FBI, HSI, U.S. Marshals, ATF, U.S. Postal. I mean, the list goes on and on. To recap the charges, we're really largely right now talking about 4 individuals. First, Giovanni. Giovanni got introduced to us as likely the last person that our victim spoke to. We knew that we got a FACES comparison through the Pinellas County FACES, and then we, the Sheriff's Office and our State Attorney's Office, executed a search warrant not related to this particular carjacking murder on a house that Giovanni and his girlfriend Soto lived in. Coincidentally, when we were executing the search warrant, the federal organization of HSI arrested Soto for accepting delivery of 3 kilos of cocaine down in Osceola County. That is a federal investigation. Giovanni, his crime and his alleged activity are state attorney's office and the sheriff's office. Those are our cases here. So the trafficking fentanyl, the stolen merchandise, the drugs, the gun that was found at the house, that is state. We talked about the 2 others, Jordan or Jordanish and Kivo. We said that Jordan was the person that was holding the gun that was at that scene, and then Kivo, through various records and sources, was connected as a person who was connected to a car that picked up a couple of the people that were driving the green Acura, and then ultimately records put him at the scene of the carjacking. The last news conference I had was that was going to be worked federally. So Jordan and Kivo and Soto are all under the federal umbrella. I think that any person who's watched this know that this is that rare case. You know, in police work, you have 2 different things that you say. You say that this is a isolated incident and a random act, which is incredibly alarming, or you say that this is not a random act. The players in this are connected some way, somehow, and of course, I feel what we witnessed out there with that carjacking, what we witnessed with the murder, are probably symptoms of a larger problem that's going on that extend well beyond the scope of the 18th Judicial Circuit and the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. So working with the State Attorney Phil Archer and all that, we had made the determination to move this case federally. Here with us today is somebody who I have great respect for, is actually the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer of the Middle District of Florida. That's U.S. Attorney Roger Hamburg. He will be here with leaders of the federal agencies. And I think what is also important is that we have one voice and one authority speaking on the follow-up, what are the next steps. You always run into problems if there's 2 different organizations giving feedback, giving updates. So with this press briefing, it should serve as an official public handoff between us handing off the work that we've done to Roger Hamburg, our U.S. Attorney, and the various federal agencies that we partner with. We will continue to partner with them. We have various members of the Seminole County Sheriff's Office that serve as task force agents on the various federal agencies that are represented here today. But with that, I'll introduce U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Florida, Roger Hamburg.
If my law enforcement partners can join me from the federal government. Good afternoon. I'm going to do some introductions from your left to right. We've got FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Josh Del Manzo. To his right, to his left, your right, we have HSI Special Agent in Charge, John Condon. We then have Eddie Hobb, who is the United States Postal Inspection Service team leader for this area. We then have Nishan Tulsi, who's the Assistant Special Agent in charge for DEA. And then lastly, we have Assistant Special Agent in charge, Dave Pizzuti with Homeland Security Investigations. And thank you, Sheriff, for that introduction, and thank you for your leadership and for the excellent work that you and your office have done on this investigation. Combating violent crime is a top priority of the United States Department of Justice, and it's a top priority of my office, the United States Attorney's Office. During my time as the United States Attorney for the second largest district in the country, I've committed an unprecedented number of resources to prosecuting violent criminals. My office is dedicated to this mission. It's a mission that we share with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners, some of whom are with me here today. They are the backbone of our crime-fighting efforts, and we work hand in hand with them every day to identify, arrest, and prosecute violent criminals. And that is why I'm here today, to tell you about the federal charges that have been brought as a result of the joint local, state, and federal investigation into a terrible act of violence that was committed 18 days ago in Central Florida. The facts of the carjacking and murder are very well known. On April 11th, Catherine Aquavivas, a 31-year-old woman from Homestead, was carjacked and kidnapped in Seminole County. She was murdered, and she was found dead in Osceola County. It was a gruesome murder. The victim was shot several times, and her body was found in a burning car. And as the sheriff said, and as I believe, this was not a random act. It was a targeted act. And this targeted act has led to a targeted local, state, and federal law enforcement investigation. Over the past 18 days, you have heard 3 individuals identified as persons of interest: Kevin Omar Ocasio-Justiano, Giovanna Crespo Hernandez, and Jordanash Torres Garcia. Within a week of the carjacking and murder, all 3 of those individuals had warrants issued for their arrest. And within 2 weeks of the carjacking and murder, all 3 of those individuals were arrested. None of them are out on bond. All of them are being held in custody. The outstanding police work that led to these charges and arrests started immediately. This simply has been an all-hands-on-deck situation. In addition to the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, they have not been alone. Many other local and state enforcement agencies have assisted in this investigation, including the Orlando Police Department, the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, and the St. Cloud Police Department. They have been joined by 5 federal agencies: the Federal Bureau of Investigation,